welcome back to the UK Games Expo live stream. Bit of a set change, and we are joined by Iain and Jamie from the Giant Brain. How you doing, folks?
We are pretty well, I think. All good. I'm not sure which Iain was first there, but yeah, let's say it was me.
Yeah, why not?
Oh, what a surprise, Iain. I'm good, thank you.
I was the first Iain on this cast, okay?
Assert your dominance from the start. There we go.
Absolutely.
So, welcome to the UK Games Expo live stream. Thank you for taking time out on this Wednesday afternoon to have a chat with us. We've got a couple of things to talk about here with the Giant Brain and also brainwaves. And everything that goes on the website and about yourselves. I hear one of you might do something with physics in the real life. I'm not sure, but
not anymore.
But start off for folks who might not have heard about the Giant Brain or the podcast. Who wants to give us the origin story? Who wants to tell us how this ball got rolling?
I'll go for that because the site was originally sort of a solo effort from me in the long ago, way back at Gen Con in the US. I don't remember what year. I decided to start designing games, and in chats with friends in a very hot Indianapolis, I came up with the Giant Brain as a name because I was sort of going for an idea of a possible educational bent to game design. And that sort of like bubbled under for a few years. I did some wee bits and pieces, ran some playtest groups, that kind of thing, but never really made much of it. And then about three and a half years ago, I changed the focus of the site for journalism. I decided that I enjoyed writing about games more than I did designing them. Mm-hmm. So started to sort of write reviews and critique and that kind of thing. So that's where all sort of the review stuff started. And then about 2 years ago, 2 years ago is now, Jamie, I think. About 2 years ago now, I started to think about podcasting, and specifically started looking around about what podcasts were out there and what they did, and started to think about a sort of satirical board game news show, much like the Day to Day, and that kind of thing. And the podcast that shall never speak its name, the very first episodes, which no one has ever heard apart from me and Jamie, and our original third host, Sam, and some friends that we put it out to, which was not very good, was along that vein, a sort of slightly satirical, slightly day-to-day-ish kind of news show.
Oh, it turns out comedy is hard.
Comedy is hard. Who knew?
A little backstory to that, which was Sam and I met about actually the same time as Iain. We met about 4 or 5 years ago in Edinburgh. And Sam and I were doing, let's call it a podcast. It was us kind of sitting across from each other. Something actually very similar to what we do on Brainwaves, which is just reading news stories at each other and talking about them. But it kind of went nowhere. And it lay in stasis for a while. And then Iain got in contact with me and said, and Sam, do you want to do this but more?
Yeah. So got in touch with these two. We did a first one, put it out to a small group of friends, and we got some feedback. Always good to have friends who'll give you honest feedback on things before you put them out into the wider world. And the feedback we got was like it was a little stilted and that kind of thing. So we decided to go with something a little bit more relaxed, just a straight up basically news broadcast, but wanted to keep it quite tight. We didn't want to have a very long show. We wanted to sort of like keep it like 30, 45 minutes kind of thing. And that's where Brainwaves started, just sort of talking about industry news and things going on in the industry. Not so much new releases and that kind of thing. We wanted to stay away from that because loads and loads of other podcasts do that much better and bigger than us. So we sort of started to carve out a niche of like talking about the industry itself and like goings on and like some nasty news stories and things like that, like covering sort of like serious stuff as well happening in the industry, mergers and all that kind of stuff. In the sort of the idea being that like the Brainwaves HQ is a thing in my fantastic Brainwaves HQ. It's absolutely definitely a real place. So we had a bit of a sort of something to structure around.
I like that as a concept. Yes. I like that as a concept because the chat we had on last week as well, he talks about games, plays games. He sets the scene each time differently. And I said it's just to disguise the mansion. And clearly as podcasters, that's where you guys are going. I mean, you're saying you're in different locations. This is obviously, I mean, it looks like other Iain is in the theatre. And James has clearly got his Godzilla stuff, so that's part of the studio, and you're in the library section. So I like it. It's good. It's good. Going in podcasting, guys. It's clearly megabucks.
Yeah.
And I was going away for a couple of months at the beginning of this year, slightly less than we thought because global pandemic. Who knew? After Sam had left, we decided to have a kind of rotating third guest slot, usually someone from the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was going away, Ian didn't want to do it by himself. So I'd met Ian C at a couple of events throughout Scotland. And on a very nice car journey back from Tabletop Scotland, we talked a little bit more. And I believe Ian put the offer to Ian to kind of take over for me for a while.
Yeah. And as I was finishing my degree, I thought, I've got plenty of spare time. I will absolutely jump on this. So, haven't slept much the last 6 months.
So
that's what podcasting does to you.
Yeah. So you've all now you've kind of got together. You produce the Brainwaves podcast. So is it, how often do you put that out? Is it weekly, monthly? What's the schedule there? And
at the moment we're fortnightly. I did originally have an idea of being weekly, and I'm very, very glad that I never did that, because editing a podcast is a lot of work. I mean, I'm much faster now than I was when we first started. And originally Sam, who originally hosted with us, was our original editor, and then I took over doing those duties when Sam left. Currently lost in time and space somewhere. But so we're fortnightly. Summarize the news from the previous sort of couple of weeks. We're usually recording these days on a sort of Thursday, Friday of the week before we put the podcast out, and podcast goes out on a Monday. So it's as up to date as we can make it, pretty much, with everything that's going on. We had a wee break. We have wee breaks every now and again. Occasionally put out like sort of some older casts that used to be Patreon exclusive called Idle Thoughts, which are sort of sister cast talking about just games we've been playing. That's now going out as a wider cast, so we'll be doing that. Well, the original idea was we were going to do that a bit more often, but playing games together right now is problematic to say the least.
There's a challenge there at the minute, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, we met up recently in Glasgow. When was that? Was that August?
The end of August.
End of August, just before the new set of lockdowns came into play at the Lucky Sparrow Gaming Cafe. Our executive producers, they're very nice people. And that was good to get some games actually played in real life, but that's not going to happen for a while now, unfortunately.
So are you got any plans to try maybe Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator or anything like that? How's the thoughts on those going?
So I think at the beginning of lockdown, as Ian said, we did a bit of Twitch streaming of some board games. I think it was predominantly through Tabletop Simulator. And it seemed to go pretty well. I mean, I think it's a good resource, once you get kind of used to some of the little tips and tricks to make just navigating it that little bit better. I've tried a couple of them. Like the other one, I think I played Tabletopia and Board Game Arena, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't remember exactly. Again, I like them in many different ways. One's more automated, one's got a nicer interface. It's good. I might get back on that now. Just with the lockdown 2 about to come on. I mean, I can't speak for the others, but I might get back on that.
Yeah, well, I've got a little pile of games that, like, you can see the sort of bottom of here, which I was very excited to get at the start of the year. Like, it was the sort of largest pile of review copies I'd had yet. I was like, yeah, great, I'll get these games reviewed. There's like, no, I won't. So I need to track down some of those are on like Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator, that kind of thing. So I do need to get those played and reviews in, because those folks have been waiting a little while to actually get those games out. So yeah, I've used Tabletop Simulator a bit with these guys and my Wednesday night group, Tabletopia a little bit. I've played some Board Game Arena as well as friends, and yeah, they've all got their strengths and weaknesses. Certainly, I find there's a slight thing in my brain which it reminds me of not of playing physical games, which I find slightly sad because I can't play the physical games. So yeah, that's always slightly at the back of my mind. But yeah, they're perfectly good, and since there's not really many other ways to play games right now, it's better than not playing games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe let's talk about, because you do on the Giant Brain, you do board game reviews. And while maybe not dive into a review right now, let's kind of tell us about how it goes from this pile of review games arrives to something on the site. Do you all get together and review? Do you all have your sort of specialties? What's the process kind of going on there?
If we can get together and play, that's always good, because I'm the main writer for the site, so I do most of the actual writing of reviews. When we get a game, we try and get it played. I try and get it played relatively quickly, like sort of in the next sort of couple of months or so. That's not happening right now, obviously. But yeah, if we can get together and play games, that's good, because it means I can bounce my thoughts off Jamie and Ian, and they have different taste to me. Which is good, because it means that I can get a different perspective on things.
It does mean we start a lot of meetups with Ian going, I don't really like this game, so let's play it and find out why I don't like it.
Yeah, there is sometimes that if I've maybe played something a couple of times and then I'm like, this is okay, but there's something not quite right that I'm not quite sure about. It's good to get other perspectives on it.
Then you might play it with us and go, actually, I do like it. I just don't like it at this amount of players or with this certain rules.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a way to, like, especially some of these games behind me are like party games, and that kind of like medium you can see at the top of the screen there is a party game. So I need to try and get that played at some point, but it needs a good number of people to sort of shake out properly. So things like that, like we get approached about RPG reviews now and again. And I've just put one up on the site today, actually, Gone from John Harper and Sean Nittner and Evil Hat Productions. And the only time I really write RPG reviews is after I've played them a bit. And it takes a long time to do that, because obviously RPGs take a lot of time and effort to actually understand and learn and then play and get a handle on it and then figure out whether you like it or not. But yeah, every game's a little bit different. Like smaller games might just be a couple of plays to get a handle on it, get enough of a sort of critical opinion. Like I've got Spirit Island currently that I'm trying to get enough games in to try and form an opinion on that. I think I really like it, but I haven't played enough of the things that are in the box yet to
find out all the bits of the game.
To really figure that out. And it's some games like I put out a review of Gloomhaven last year, and Gloomhaven is just one of those games that I'm never sure I'm quite ready or ever be ready to review. It's so enormous.
It's very chunky.
Yeah, it's like 90 missions or something like that. It's in that box.
It's 94, Rich. We're on mission 3.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Games Expo HQ has only just cracked open the box that's been around for about 2 years or something, hasn't it?
Yeah. That's an intimidating thing to review. I think we got about 16. I think we're about 16 in thereabouts, and it was about 10 in. I was like, right, I think I have enough of a handle on this to write about it.
Yeah.
But you start to say, I haven't opened all these boxes and I haven't played this stuff. But you have to write something at some point.
Like, how do you kind of temper? Like, obviously with Gloomhaven, you want to get in there, get it, and review it and tell the world kind of how you found it. And how do you temper that with, like, actually, do you amongst yourselves sort of keep each other in check rather than just like, I need to tell everybody how brilliant this is, and you're like, whoa. Whoa, we've played half a game,
I mean, like, first impressions are okay. Like we've all got Twitter accounts. So like Ian played Familiar what's that game from DigiSprite called that was out recently?
Yeah, Familiar Alchemy. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so Ian was on the Kickstarter page for that, but there wasn't a full review from us, but Ian's opinion was on there because we played it a bit. So that's totally fine. But yeah, I mean, I'm always conscious of the ethics of reviewing, like, a lot, and I've written about it several times on the site, and we've talked about it on the cast several times as well. So like Ian did some drawing for Anna Blackwell's, what's her Delve sequel called?
Umbra.
Yeah. And I was originally lining up Ian to write about it on the site because he's played it a bit and really, really liked it, and Anna had contacted us about like producing a review, but because he's now been paid by Anna for the front cover of the next book, there's a clash there that we can't ignore. So yeah, we're always conscious of that, and I think we keep each other in check, relatively so.
I mean, you usually post your reviews for us to have a little look over.
Yeah.
And if it's a game that we've played, we can kind of temper that and go, I understand what you say there, but maybe offer this more balanced opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So like it's good to bounce things off each other a lot, and yeah, I occasionally throw reviews out to like friends to have a look at as well and that kind of thing. But since I've got these two, it's mostly they see the first drafts, which are big. I sort of like I write with pen and paper mostly.
Wow.
For drafts.
Oh wow, analog, love it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I write with pen and paper mostly for drafts because I find it's just a good way to just get ideas out and then draft it into a Drive doc that I then share with the rest of the team to have a look at, then into WordPress for sort of final editing and photos and that kind of thing. So yeah, it takes a little while.
Has there ever been a game where all three of you have just done the whole holy cats, this is amazing, you all need to stop everything and play it right now? Is there ever any that kind of thing, or you got such varied interests?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
There's a lot of
back at all the reviews
body
on the
language
site.
there. Everyone's like,
Yes, I think there is one. And I'll have to double check with you guys. Scroll.
Yes, Scroll is amazing from Big Potato Games. Yes.
Nice.
Scroll is absolutely fantastic. We all love that game, and I think Sam loves that game as well. So that's like past and present members of the Giant Brain all love that game.
From
it's
having
really
once had to maintain that game in a board game cafe, I'm very aware of Scroll. Yes.
Yeah. I can imagine keeping it clean was not easy.
Both in both sense of that sentence there. Yes. With Scroll.
I've always wanted them to produce like a really, really good family kids version because they've got two versions of it, and one's really not safe for work, and one's a bit risque but still a bit much for families. And I'd love to see like even just a deck of cards that is like pure
proper
unadulterated, just
100% PG.
Yeah, because you will still get absolutely horrible things coming out of that. Because it's Scrolls, and that's what will happen.
That's the intent of the game, really. There, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, are you all into that kind of party games together, or is that just the nature of that sort of genre?
I think Scroll's just such immediate fun that if you don't like it, you might just be dead inside.
The opinions of Ian Chandler do not resemble the opinions of the rest of the team.
Resemble and represent.
Yeah, you're the one who corrects my words. Yeah, that's true. I find party games kind of weird. Like, I think they sink or swim very, very hard with the group you're playing with. And I think pretty much every sort of big reviewer has said this at some point, is that like Scroll might sing with one group and absolutely sink with another, because just the nature of the moment, the time, what's going on, the nature of the party or whatever. And like sort of like hidden role games are quite like that. Like I really like Mafia de Cuba. Jamie's not as much of a fan of that one as I am.
I liked it, but I've played games of it where it has been quite a big group. And it just sunk. And it's that cliche to go, well, it always depends on the group. Your favorite game, you love it with these people, but it's really true. And how do you know that? Just take it to a group that doesn't click with it and just watch it die and go, okay.
Yeah. I mean, at least with party games, the dying doesn't happen. That happens very quickly. Yeah. They're not usually very long. Like if it fails, you're just like, oh well,
next game kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's also come to knowing your group as well. So when you take it to these guys, we're going to have games of this ilk, and when we take it to these guys, we are not going to play that, but they'll be right into this one instead. So, which is interesting.
It's one of the things that sort of shapes my collection, is that most of the time, unfortunately, I don't get to play games with Jamie and Ian as much as I'd like. And we were starting like proper regular meetups for the team at the start of the year before everything happened. But my own collection it's quite small, but it does get shaped by the group I regularly play with, because they have certain tastes that have shaped the games I buy. Like, we're not really big Eurogame fans at all. So the most complicated Eurogame I've got in my collection is Lords of Waterdeep.
Oh, it's a good one, though.
Right. Yeah, it's good. I really like Lords of Waterdeep. It's really good fun, and it's quite light. But anything heavier than that I've tried is just sunk.
So how about you, Jamie? Do you have like a set of games that you're the expert on, if you will, or you're more focused on?
I'm having a look at my collection and I'm going, I don't know, to be honest. There's a kind of very general thing. There seems to be this joke among these two that I'm the worker placement guy because I have something like 5 or 6 worker placement games on my shelf. I mean, they're fine. You know, I like it as much as I like other ones. I don't think I have anything that I'm particularly specialist on, I'd say. I'm very happy to be kind of a jack of all trades, master of none.
I heard it is games agnostic.
Yes, that is a perfect
games agnostic, man. It took me a few minutes, like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I got no specifications. I got no specifications. I'm like, yeah, play a bit of Root.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lost Jamie there, is it?
Oh, am I going? My audio
again.
dropping
again.
There we go. I'm back. Yeah, a bit of everything. A bit of Root, a bit of photosynthesis, a bit of Rhino Hero.
Love Rhino Hero. It's brilliant.
Oh, Rhino Hero. What
a beautiful game. It's just fantastic.
I could spend a good time talking about how much I love that game.
Yep.
But I'm not going to.
and is it the same for you, Iain? Not top.
Iain.
Iain C.
As I see him, he's down there.
Yeah. I also extremely generalist, but with a very heavy devotion to Netrunner. Other Iain also likes Netrunner, but I've definitely got way too much into Netrunner this year. Yeah, if left to my own devices, we'll just start building decks before I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It is quite nice. Sorry, just very quickly, because the two Ians are very big on kind of CCGs. I know Arkham Horror and Netrunner. These two are very big on. These two have played Gloom. I don't like those kind of games personally. Two Ians love Gloomhaven, have Gloomhaven, played Gloomhaven. I'm happy to be the other one. Sorry, Iain. Sorry, Iain. You were in the middle of chatting just to say just what you were saying about kind of nice, different tastes.
Yeah.
So we have Jones Family Games Night have asked on the Twitter, how difficult is it to talk about tricky issues in the gaming industry? How do you have sort of like a moment before record and sort of try and drill down to what's going on? Is the podcast pretty much the first thoughts? How do you deal with that? How do you go through it?
We can talk a wee bit about how the podcast put together. Basically, we put out a doc amongst the three of us that's shared in the 2 weeks or run up to the next recording. That gets filled with links and that kind of thing, news articles, and then we start to flesh that out with what we want to talk about, bullet points, information, and that kind of thing. And when we come across like tricky stuff like abuse allegations or things like that, we tend to have a bit of a chat. We've got a private Discord where we talk about things. And sort of drill down into what we want to talk about, reaching out to people and that kind of thing, whether we should. So we've reached out a few times over certain articles to sort of ask for permission to talk about those kind of things. It's never 100% easy. And at first we didn't really dive into that stuff. There was a change at some point about halfway through year one where we sort of made the jump. I can't remember what it was.
I don't know what the exact situation was, but I think we had a chat and we went, well, we're doing the news, and by its very nature, the news is not always this funny thing has happened and this cool thing has happened. Yeah. The news is by nature sad and rather depressing in some parts.
Yeah.
And it would be doing ourselves a disservice if we decided not to focus on it and went, everything's fine. No. Don't look at that. Don't look at that. Everything's fine in the board game industry. Yeah. But I just picking up on what Iain said. Yeah, I think we kind of jot down some notes, then discuss together like how we're going to approach it. And then when it comes to the actual recording, the number of times, we've had to stop kind of someone midstream and go, can you do that bit again? This needs to be clarified. Can you say this?
Yeah. So the podcast's pretty heavily edited. It's not just sort of stream of consciousness stuff.
It's not what me and Sam used to do.
Yeah, so I like to edit pretty tight. Like we were saying earlier, about sort of half an hour to sort of 40 minutes is our aim for the cast. There's an extended version of the cast which is more sort of blooper reels, maybe not quite the right word, but mistakes and that kind of thing that get put out for the patrons. It's a longer cast, and maybe like extra articles if we cover a bit too much and something needs to get cut. But we're always editing quite tightly, and that, like Jamie says, sometimes involves with the difficult stuff, taking a couple runs at it, because some of the stuff's hard to talk about, and there's a temptation to sort of blast through it and do it very quickly, whereas it actually needs sort of care and attention. And like I say, we've reached out on trickier stuff from time to time. It is hard, and it always is. It's never easy to talk about sort of like sort of the darker side of the industry, and that'll go for anybody who covers news stuff. But we are doing the news, and that's why we're there. So we're doing a disservice if we don't cover that stuff.
And I can only speak for myself here, but the news, my views may not necessarily represent those of the Giant Brain and Brainwaves, but I believe you've got to show the industry for its flaws and its perks.
Yeah,
warts and all.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good phrase for it, and I was like,
yeah, no, definitely warts and all. I mean, we cover this stuff because we love the industry, we play games a lot, but the difficult stuff needs talked about, like things like unionization in the sort of Cards Against Humanity and in Kickstarter, that sort of stuff that we've covered before. All that stuff's worth talking about because it's important, it's interesting, and it will affect how board games get produced and talked about somewhere down the line.
Do you find yourselves now having to sift through a lot of things that isn't necessarily what would be part of Brainwood, like the news as you put it, and is more promotional? Is the signal to noise kind of more to deal with now where you've been off for a while?
Sometimes some weeks it's harder than others because we had a break at the start of this month actually, because there had been quite a lot when the pandemic started. I thought we might not be doing this for a while because board game news would just be non-existent because conventions weren't happening. I assumed releases would slow down, that kind of thing, and the sort of controversies with stuff coming out would also slow down as well. What we found actually was there was more news than ever. There's a cat. It's much more important.
The cat.
Yay!
The cat is quite famous and is a feature of things. So yes, that's good.
Yeah.
Hello. Hey, Lucky.
Oh, it's amazing.
What was I saying? I've forgotten now because I got distracted by a cat.
We were talking about how the COVID would perhaps have slowed down Brainwaves and the news and
re-releases and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, up until this point, actually, we've had probably a lot more news than we thought we would, because there seems to have been a thing where the slowdown and maybe releases and conventions and that kind of thing has allowed, I don't know what it is, but allowed people to take stock a little bit of the industry. And in doing that, there's been a lot of sort of things about unionization and abuse allegations and that kind of thing coming out almost all at once. Mm-hmm. So for about 2 months or 2.5 months, the cast was quite dark because there was a lot of kind of horrible stuff coming out about various people in the industry and various companies and all sorts. That's brightened a little bit now, and we took a break last month because there was after UK Games at Virtual Expo and Virtual Gen Con, everything seemed to sort of slow down quite a bit. We haven't seen as much coming out, but that's picked up again. We should have enough for cast number 57.
57.
Coming out. 57 is coming out Monday.
Oh gosh.
We'll be recording that on Friday. There seems to be a good bit of news about. But sometimes we look. The last cast we put out was a bit shorter than normal, and we'd always like to put out a tight, short cast rather than a long, rambling one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is why it's heavily edited.
Which is why it's heavily edited.
I mean, I think we've got some news for this week. I mean, I can't think of any.
There's definitely been no big announcements.
Hit like yesterday or something like that. I don't know.
Nothing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely not. There's not been incredible nerd rage or controversy about anything recently. Oh no.
Save it for the podcast, Ian. Save it for the podcast.
do. So the other side is the podcast. You've got Brainwaves and then the Giant Braves, and we the Giant Brain. We spoke about it maybe a little bit, but there are some really insightful kind of posts you've put out on like the actual operation of a review site or a podcast kind of thing, and being really open and truthful about how this whole sort of operation goes on, which I think a lot of folks maybe just think it's quite easy to put out a website and then you can just do it in your spare time. There's no money going to be invested in it. It's not going to cost you a thing. Podcasts, anyone can do that. What was the motivation behind these posts about what it costs you to do and how much your Patreon might have generated and so on?
Well, Mr. Chandler's been quite good on the ethics in the last little while, and we're wanting at some point to do something about sort of the Advertising Standards Agency and how that comes into things. But that quite aside, one of the issues with reviewers, as I see it, is there's always an issue of trust, and that comes up almost constantly. Like a couple times a year, there is something that kicks off in the board game sphere about, has this person been paid for their review, paid previews, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. What's the difference between advertising and critique and all that? That pops up a couple times a year, easy. And like you were saying earlier, ethics is kind of always on my mind about how we present stuff. So at the top of reviews, we say how we get things, whether I've bought it or Jamie bought it or Iain bought it or we got given a review copy or if it's a Kickstarter preview or however we came by it. And one of the ways I think a site builds trust is to be open and honest about things as much as possible. So disclosure is the sort of way we go about it. Because in the end, if you're Joe Blogs on the streets and you've come to the Giant Brain for the first time, you don't know us from Adam and don't know whether we're trustworthy or we're paid chills or whatever. So one of the ways we want to try and get around that is by being open and honest about how we do things. So how we put the cast together, how we pay for the cast. So that's the most recent post you're alluding to, is the one I put out on money and how much it costs to put the cast together. And it's not very much, but there is money involved in hosting on Podbean and hosting a WordPress site. And we have a Patreon and how much money we get in from that and how much money we're currently sitting on, a whole £61. Everyone who's watching, do not get into podcasting if you want to earn a lot of money, or at least don't get into a niche of a niche, which is board game news podcasting. So yeah, it just being honest about that process. And over the course of the last year or so, I've become a bit more interested in talking about sort of the ethics and of a lot of board game discussion and that kind of thing. So I've put out pieces on, like, there's a lot of discussion recently about separating politics from board gaming, which is impossible for all.
Sorry, that's really mean of me, but I stand by that.
I hope Jamie's not laughing at the piece there.
Oh no, I wasn't laughing at the piece, because I think I remember I looked at it and went, change this. Yeah. I know I've been vocal on Twitter about it. I think I just went, everything is political. Art is political by its very nature.
Yeah. That's a whole other Twitch stream.
Yeah, that is, I think, a whole different.
I'll take a step back.
Yeah, so it's. I think it's always interesting to talk about that kind of stuff. And if you're going to be a good critic, people need to know how you feel about stuff, because then they can decide whether you're there for you or not. Yeah, like there's always this weird thing that comes up with like unbiased reviews. And the idea that there can ever be an unbiased review is kind of anathema.
Spurious.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can try your best to say, I'm influenced by X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
This is where I brought up with these things. This is what I generally love. Today, I didn't have caffeine, so you're not going to start on a good level here, chaps. I'm sorry, but it is, yeah.
I mean, we like film reviewers aren't expected to be like. It's a weird thing to me, and I don't know if other review kind of people get it or not, but like Roger Ebert, who's amazingly big film reviewer, people followed him because he had particular opinions and he expressed them in a particular way. Not because he went, everything's okay, great.
Yeah.
It's because he had opinions and he was very forthright about them. And like some of my favorite reviewers, like Dan Thurrow on Space Biff, are like you follow them because of the way they write and the way they express their opinions. And
and you want the discussion. You can't have the saccharine sweet. Oh yeah, everything's fine, everything's good. It's like, how big is your patio? Because I don't believe that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, and but above all, we want that discussion. We want to like chat, like the start of this year. I hooked up with There Will Be Games. Who knows? Time has no meaning anymore.
Yeah, well, it's been Thursday for 6 months.
Second day of September.
Yeah, it's definitely Julember.
Lousy March weather.
Julember the 56th of who knows. But yeah, at the start of this year, we hooked up with There Will Be Games. So they were originally Fortress of Ameritrash, and now There Will Be Games, and they're full of writers I really admire. So I was really, really pleased to hook up with them. They're putting out the podcast and are writing as well. And the discussion on there is always good, and there's always interesting things to chat about there. Hello, Cattail.
I mean, I think this is a side of it that you don't normally get through the podcast. Like the cat can sit in front between yourself and the microphone and wave its tail about, but until you're on a Twitch stream, nobody knows about that.
He does
really.
play with this sometimes, though.
You're not hear one of my dogs going mad at the invisible murderers that are outside or trying to get in the door.
It's kind of led us to a point now. Where can folks find you? Where can they download Brainwaves? What is this Patreon that you mentioned? And where are you all on Twitter? Like, let's help people find out if you are the reviewers and get the news that they want.
I'll let the other two go first with their Twitter handles, and then I'll do the advertising bit.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm Unmech, UNMECH, short for Unpopular Mechanics on Twitter, where I just chat a lot. Maybe now I'm a student. I'm no longer a student. I might not be on literally every minute of the day, but maybe. Over to you, Jamie.
I need to find my Twitter handle. Give me a second. Phil. I'm at Jamie_W_Adams, which is my name. I talk occasionally.
Sometimes
I generally talk nonsense, but that's where you can find me.
And the main sort of account for us on Twitter is @thegiantbrain. That's the one I use, so I'm pretty active on there. Our website is giantbrain.co.uk, and that's where you can find the podcast and everything as well. The podcast is basically pretty much everywhere. It's on Apple iTunes, so it goes out to a bunch of sort of other feeds. Recently hooked up onto Amazon as well, and Podbean's just had an update, and I need to put us on a bunch of other services, so we'll be on those soon. But we're on most places. Like if you have a podcast app on your phone, you'll be able to find us pretty much. Facebook, just search The Giant Brain. We are on there. And our Patreon is...
Phil.
Yeah, it's just The Giant Brain is our Patreon. We've got enough, as the article we put out recently. Basically, the Patreon is to basically pay for the website and podcast hosting. It pays for a little bit more than that now, and we need to decide what we do with that at some point in the not too distant future. Maybe buy Iain a webcam or something like that. Or like
sweets.
Spend on sweets. Yeah. Spend on sweets and a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Where else? Website, Twitter, Facebook, Patreon. Yeah, that's basically where we are.
And if we hit any one of those three, we can find out anywhere else that we might have missed.
Indeed. Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that there will be a new podcast landing early next week. So it sounds like a great point for folks to go out and hit the subscribes. And if you do enjoy The Giant Brain or the Brainwaves podcast, help the folks out, give them a review or a rating. That's always a really wonderful thing to support your favorite podcasters and reviewers in the board gaming industry. As I said last week when we were talking to More Games Please, who is in the chat right now, he wants to know who is this Phil and where can he find him.
Hi, Ross.
If you have a favorite podcaster or reviewer or streamer or YouTuber and you want us to have a chat with them, find out a little bit more about what makes them tick, let us know in the Twitch chat or give us a high five on Twitter. Tell us who we should pester to come on our Twitch stream. It's been wonderful chatting with you folks and meeting Loki the cat as well. That was a treat and a half.
He's a key member of the team.
Absolute key member of the team.
Yep.
We're going to take a short moment break. And as Richard is here, we're going to ask him some questions after Virtually Expo and for 2021. I keep having to remind myself 2021. But gents, it's been great to meet you. Thanks very much for popping by.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah.